Foreign direct investment driving development. Sustainable growth through knowledge transfer. Technology as a solution. Innovation as a way forward. Over 70 ministers, 140 countries, over 500 exhibitors, 8,000 square meters of exhibition, 15,000 businessmen and investors. The annual investment meeting, sustainable development through FDI-induced innovation and technology transfer.
Mrs. Saratu Umar to the high table. Mrs. Saratu Umar will be supported on the high table by a couple of gentlemen. We would like to start with His Excellency, the Nigerian Ambassador to UAE, Alhaji Ibrahim Awolo. Following suit will be Mr. Segun Awolo, the Chief Executive Officer of Nigerian Export Promotion Council. You're welcome, sir. And finally, we would like to have Mr. Tony Cole, Chairman, Sahara Groups.
Session this morning on behalf of Nigeria. And we crave your indulgence to give us your attention for the next few minutes. I'm sure some of you know where Nigeria is located, and some of you do not. But Nigeria is located in Africa. It is in West Africa, to be precise. It has over 900,000 square kilometers of land. It has a very rich culture. Going through the earlier video, you would see just a little bit of what Nigeria has on offer. We have 36 states in Nigeria, and we have over 700 local government areas. The government is democracy, and our official language is English, and we're at the time zone of GMT +1. On the economy, we are the largest economy in Africa, having over $510 billion worth, and the 26th largest in the world. Our growth rate has been stable, and it continues to rise at about 6%. The debt outlook is about $69 billion, and debt to GDP ratio is below 14%. The inflation rate is about 8.1%. Our external reserves about $37 billion, and Nigeria has exercised a lot of fiscal discipline in recent past. This is just a snapshot of our economic environment. Like I said earlier, it's expected to grow steadily at about 6% over the next 5 years. And it's the biggest economy, like I said earlier. Job creation along different sectors shows education has the largest, manufacturing about 11%, and so on and so forth. On the sectoral contribution to GDP, we can see that industry has about 2%, showing that there's a huge opportunity there for industrialists to go and contribute more to the GDP. Also manufacturing about 6%, also showing that there's a huge opportunity there. Services the largest, and it also shows this opportunity for growth for those involved in services sector. Nigeria is a member of the Mint countries, and is projected to be one of the top countries in the next few years. It's one of those 11 economies that are the next emerging market. And the Wall Street Journal Sentiment Index has placed Nigeria as one of the most watched frontier markets in the world. At least 3 out of 10 companies have put Nigeria as one of the countries they would like to do business in. And Nigeria's global region we have a high return on investment of at least 36%. In some sectors, it even goes higher than that. Nigeria has a lot of abundant resources. We have over 33 exportable mineral resources. We've mentioned some of them here, including lead, zinc, iron ore, and a host of them. We've got vast arable land. Later on in the presentation, we'll talk a bit more of the opportunities in the agri sector. We have a very large market of about 170 million people. And like we always say, there are 170 million reasons to invest in Nigeria. And the beauty of Nigeria's location is that it's not just about the 170 million people. Any industrialist that is, or manufacturing concern or investor that situates in Nigeria also has access to the West African market, making a total of over 230 million people. Nigeria's population of 170 million has most of it in youth population. We have almost 70% of youth, showing that it's a growing population and a growing market as well. Access to finance, there are about 22 deposit money banks and about 700 microfinance banks. We have about 5 development finance institutions, and just about a week or two ago, about 10 days ago, the federal government of Nigeria launched the Development Bank of Nigeria, which would give longer access to finance and to investors. So that's another advantage we have in the country. For incentives, we have a range of them. But particularly, we do have what we call the tax holiday, which I'm sure a number of you are aware of. And for now, it's a maximum of 5 years. But we also have sectoral incentives depending on the sector you're operating. And there's also room for exceptional cases where the tax holiday could be longer than 5 years. It's a free market economy. We allow 100% ownership of companies by foreigners, except, of course, for goods that are listed on the negative list, which even the local investors cannot take part in. There's a free flow of investment where investors are allowed to repatriate 100% of whatever profit or dividends that they make. There's a robust private sector. We have some of our private sector players here that would say a thing or two to you later. We also have skilled and low-cost labor. And we're continuously working on improving the skills of our citizens. And we also are trying to make sure that when an investor has requirements for certain skills, we ensure that our ITF, which is the Industrial Training Fund, also trains personnel to be able to suit any particular skill requirements that may not be readily available. Looking at FDI a bit more closely, we're coming down to numbers here. In the last 1 year, Nigeria has been able to attract about $5.6 billion of FDI. It's one of the top 3 in Africa, and it's getting better and better, and we expect that this would get higher as the years go by. Currently, we have over 60 billion of pipeline investments that are expected within the next 1 year into the country. But along different sectors, we have specific investment requirements. If you look at this slide, on the energy, we require about $900 billion to develop the energy sector within the next 30 years. So if you look at what we're allocating in budgetary terms, just an estimate, and then look at then, if we just relied on our budget solely, what would be able to achieve, it shows if we relied solely on our budget, if it remains constant, we'd only be able to get about $10 billion to finance the requirement for the energy sector. And if you take that, there's a funding gap of about 890 billion, which shows the investment opportunity for investors in that sector. And government expects to fund about 48% of that 890 billion from investment. So for investors that are interested in energy sector, that's something for you to follow up on. Then along transport, there's also an opportunity there, showing a funding gap of almost $800 billion. For agriculture, water, and mining, there's also an opportunity there of about $340 billion. And then ICT, you can see it there, housing and regional development, there's also a gap social infrastructure, and so on and so forth. So basically, there's a funding gap of about $2.4 trillion along different sectors. This is to show you specifics now in the agricultural sector, the different opportunities along different products in the agricultural sector. And the tomato industry, there's an opportunity there for tomato paste processing and a host of them. In cassava, in cotton, in maize, in rice, and soya beans. A lot of rice that gets consumed in Nigeria is largely imported. But there's a huge opportunity for investors that want to invest in the rice milling sector so that you can not only produce in Nigeria, you can also sell to the Nigerian population and the population around Africa as well. In agri sector, there's more opportunities there, agric as well. Then in the gas sector, just I think last week, the federal government launched the Ogidimbi gas processing industrial zone. It does have huge opportunity for investors that are interested in the gas sector. And you can follow up on that. The investment outlay that is required in that sector is about $16 billion. For infrastructure, some of it is what I mentioned earlier. And roads, for example, has a requirement of about $16.3 billion. Later on, if time permits, I'm going to call the representative of the Honorable Minister of Works, in whose purview this particular opportunity lies, to just give one or two things about what opportunity there is in the road sector. Automotive, we also have the automotive sector that does have a lot of opportunities. Of course, the auto policy was launched like 2 years ago by federal government. Already we have an influx of manufacturers of automobile in Nigeria. Nissan is one of them, Kia is one of them, and a host of others. We have Toyota coming into the country and many of them. And there's a huge opportunity there, not only for the auto itself, but also for components. So for investors that are interested in that sector, you can speak to us later for more details on that. We also have what we call the Industrial Revolution Plan. It's a very ambitious project by the government of Nigeria, and it also has linkages with all the different master plans that have been developed by the Nigerian government. The Nigerian government in the last 3 to 4 years has developed what we call the Nigeria's Transport Master Plan. In it has a range of investment opportunities. We have the Science and Technology Master Plan, we have the mining strategy, we have the agricultural transformation agenda, the infrastructure master plan, and so on and so forth. All of these different master plans are very, very precise. They do all have a range of investment opportunities in them, and some of them are already in the process of being passed into law. This I also just talk about some of the opportunities in the Industrial Revolution Plan. Like we said to you earlier, it has linkages with the different master plans that have been developed over the years. In soil minerals, for example, there's opportunity for cement and investors, auto assembly, like I mentioned earlier, basic minerals, aluminium, chemicals. In the agro-allied, specific opportunities for food processing, sugar processing, palm oil processing, cocoa processing, leather and leather products, rubber products, textiles and garments. Then in oil and gas, there's also opportunity for fertilizer, methanol, refineries, petrochemicals, and a host of them. These are also just general opportunities along different sectors, which we've spoken about before. For example, I haven't mentioned electronics earlier, but there's also an opportunity there. And to say, I think I missed out saying to you that all these opportunities are along value chains. So if I say to you, for example, cotton is taking it right up to the textile end of it. So it's along the value chain. Just of recent, we have Blisco, which is one of the top world producers of textiles that has just recently invested in Nigeria. So they've started that as well, and they are taking it right from cotton up to garment. So for investors that are interested in that industry, there's a whole range to look at as well. These are different opportunities. In transport also, we have rail network, we have airport opportunities, we have toll roads, and so many. I think time would not permit me to go into all of this in detail. And incentives, we've spoken about some of them earlier, like the tax incentive, 100% repatriation, capital allowance. We have also export incentives. When we get to that, the CEO of the Export Promotion Council is here. He's going to talk a bit more detail on that. Innovation, sugar, solid minerals, all of them have different incentives per sector. Of course, we have success stories. Like you all know, the richest man in Africa is a Nigerian, and his group is the Dangote Group. They've invested over $16 billion in certain sectors there that you can see. We also have flour mills, Indorama, P&G, which is Procter & Gamble, is also an investor in Nigeria. They've invested over $250 million recently in consumer products. We have also GE, which is an American company that have recently invested about $1 billion in the Nigerian economy. We have Lafarge, which is a French company, recently invested about $625 million, and they're actually intending to invest much more within the next 1 year, and so on and so forth. These are the different investors, international investors that we have in Nigeria. And there are also other initiatives, which some of it is actually administered by the NIPC to investors, where we have the one-stop shop, for example, is actually called the One-Stop Investment Center, where it's a center that houses about 26 government agencies. If an investor comes to Nigeria and requires to do certain registrations, licensing, and all of that, all you need to just come to NIPC and you'd actually be able to access all of those services. And we have other services that would offer, hand-holding as well. If an investor comes into Nigeria and wants to relate with either one ministry or the other, or an agency or the other, all you need to do is just come to NIPC first. NIPC is federal government's investment agency. It is mandated to encourage, to promote, and to coordinate all investments in the Nigerian economy. It does have a range of functions, but also one of them is the fact that it is also a coordinator and monitor of all investment activities in the Nigerian economy. It is also the liaison between investors, ministries, and agencies, and other institutional lenders and other players in the investment ecosystem. It is also mandated to provide hand-holding support to investors in the Nigerian economy. But let me go so that I can give a little room for one or two people to say comments on Nigeria, and we're here to answer your questions later. Thank you.
Before we go into the question and answer, I would like to invite the Chief Executive Officer of Nigerian Export Promotion Council, Mr. Segun Awolowo.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Let me start by addressing the elephant in the room. We've had our elections, and the results are being collated, and there's only one winner in these elections, and it's going to be Nigeria. So I just want to assure you that thank you. So I just thought we should get that out of the way. Okay. The Executive Secretary of Nigerian Investment Promotion Council has told you almost everything we need to say about Nigeria, and including the statistics. FDI is really a game of numbers and statistics. And I always say it's like in Nigeria we have this big born-again churches, and the story is a lady went and she went to give testimony in the church, and she told the pastor, she said, I was in a car accident and the car somersaulted 17 times to the left and 18 times to the right, and I'm happy to be alive. But the question is, who was taking the statistics when the car was somersaulting left and right? But now we have the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics, so all the figures we're reeling out to you are the figures, exact figures, and that's what the ES has given you. Let me just tell you a few opportunities for investors in the export business in Nigeria. And I'm just going to mention a few. I'm just going to talk of cocoa, cashew, and shea nut. These are areas where Nigeria has big competitive advantage. Our fellow other countries in West Africa are here, Ghana and Ivory Coast, and we're going to be surpassing them very soon. But opportunities in non-oil. The ES has told you about solid minerals, and we have 44 solid minerals in commercial quantities. Iron ore, we're the 12th largest. We have the 12th largest reserves in the world. Of course, you know about our gas. We are the 7th largest in the world. Over 90% of our land is arable land. We also lead in the production of 7 agricultural products. I'll get to that. And of course, the ES has told you, we have a very strong median age, 72% under 30. And we are strategically positioned in West Africa as well. Let me just skip on, not to waste too much time. Many of these things the ES has told you about. But let me just say, Nigeria has realized a long time ago that we cannot go on depending on oil. So a couple of years ago, our president launched the National Industrial Revolution Plan, which the Executive Secretary mentioned to you. Now, under that, we have taken 13 national strategic export products, which we know we can use to replace oil. Presently, we're working on the zero oil policy for the country. And we think when we add value to these products, we're able to bring in revenue that will surpass what we are getting on oil. And that's where you should come in for the investment in those areas. Now, the 13 strategic export products we put them under 3. There's the agro-industrial, which is palm oil, cocoa, cashew, sugar, and rice. Like the ES told you, the government policy is to move from sugarcane to sugar, which is already happening. In rice, from being a net importer of rice, now we're reducing that, we're growing more, because of course we know the agrarian revolution precedes the industrial revolution. We're growing more, and very soon we're going to start exporting oil. The next one is under mining, and you have cement, iron ore, metals, auto parts. The ES has told you more of that. But the success story in that is that Aliko Dangote, the richest man in Africa, who invested heavily in cement, from Nigeria being a net importer of cement, we are now exporting cement. And he has made billions of dollars in that. That's an opportunity for other people to come in and see. Under oil, we have the third one under oil and gas. And those are petroleum products, fertilizer, urea, petrochemical, and methanol. Nigeria being largest producer of oil in Africa, there's no reason why last year Nigeria imported $10 billion worth of petrochemical products. But the chairman of Sahara is here, another success story in Nigeria, is going to tell you what they're doing and how we're going to add value to make money on this. So, like I said, we are ranked 1 to 2 on more than 10 agricultural products. Those ones I've talked to you about. But the potential, this will give you the world ranking on many of these agricultural commodities where Nigeria is number 1. Now, cocoa is interesting. Ivory Coast is currently number 1, Ghana number 2. But Nigeria is now moving on because by the end of 2015, we hope to increase our production to 500,000 metric tons. And our goal is to surpass Ivory Coast in that. So there's a huge opportunity in cocoa. Global chocolate confectionery market is $80 billion per annum. We only receive 3% of that. Chocolate manufacturers have grown from 56 to 70% at the same time. And when you look at the cocoa futures market, it's the only stable one. It's rising. And there is no reason why we cannot take advantage of that. Cashew is another one where it's really interesting. There is interesting business opportunities for processing cashew in Nigeria to take it out. Cashew grows almost everywhere in Nigeria, and right now we're making efforts to scale up production in cashew. Shea butter is another one. We're the #1 producer of shea nut in the world. Avenue for investment is huge in that. Pineapples. These are some pineapples from Enugu, from San Carlos, a Mexican investor. We invested over $40 million in pineapples in Nigeria, and is exporting. The reason being is that it takes him 23 days to move his pineapples from Mexico to Europe, but from Nigeria it's 11 days. And then he benefits under the general system of preferences we have with the EU. So his pineapples go fast. Because of time, these are the areas for export investment in Nigeria: production, processing, packaging, technology, plant and machinery. So it's really huge. Just to say, there's no better time now than to invest in the oil export sector in Nigeria. Because of time, let me just end it there. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, CEO, Nigerian Export Promotion Council. I would like to very quickly invite the chairman of Sahara Groups, Mr. Tonye, Tonye Cole, to come on. Sorry.
Ladies and gentlemen, my task is very simple. It's to tell you from a Nigerian perspective why you as investors need to come to Nigeria. Nigeria has been very good to me. I've lived all my life in Nigeria, went to school in Nigeria, and started business in Nigeria. We're 20 years doing business in Nigeria, and believe me, it's one of the countries that has been excellent. The opportunities are endless. You've seen exactly what they've talked about. There's an issue called a perception reality gap. And this perception reality gap keeps a lot of investors away. In the early days, it was to my benefit that perception gap continued, because it meant that I didn't have competition. But I've learned over the years that competition is actually very good. And we actually need more competition in Africa, in Nigeria especially, because it helps us with the quality that we give away. We've grown a business today that is doing in excess of $12 billion, and that is simply from the opportunities that we have been able to garner in Nigeria. Financial services, I'll just give you some areas where you need to invest. A couple of years ago, I spoke to two, I'll call them Africans, people with an African heart. One is Bob Diamond, the other is Ashish Thakkar. Okay, and so I was asked a question from an African perspective that what... Something has to be done about this next year, so organizers take notes. Okay, so I was asked a question, as an investor in Africa, what is the greatest challenge that I have? And I said, first of all, opportunities are not a problem. And you've seen that, the opportunities exist. But I said, when it comes to raising capital, I always have to travel, go all over the place, come to the Middle East, go to Europe, go to America to raise capital, and that was a challenge. And I did need to, I don't need to. The point being that if we can create a very strong financial base in Africa with people who know us as Africans, who have done business there, we will be able to do this. And that's how Atlas Mara was born. And today, the investment in Atlas Mara in Africa is purchasing banks so that they can be local and give financial services to the likes of you and I. In the investment in power, Nigeria diversified, one of the first countries to do it, and all African countries are looking at Nigeria to see how the diversification in power has gone. We had to spend over, for my company, close to $1 billion, slightly over $1 billion in investment in generation and distribution companies. The entire amount of money was raised locally out of Nigeria. Why? Because of the perception gap. Most investors sat outside saying that, oh, it's Nigeria, they're not going to make the investment. Wait until we see what is going to happen. Again, it was good for us. It was good for my company because I didn't have that competition. We went in, we took it over. All the generation and all the distribution companies today are Nigerian companies that have invested in Nigeria because we believe in our country. And we're saying to you that the same belief that we have, you need to come in and do it. Hotels. One of the things that we desperately are developing in Nigeria today is hotel bed space in Nigeria. For every hotel, you pay over about $500 for a good room per night. It's an expensive hotel area, $500 for a luxury hotel. And so the hotels are rushing in, and we are looking at developers. We're developing a Radisson and a Kempinski in Nigeria, and we need a lot more. We have logistics and services. Logistics, to move goods from one place to another. We talked about all the agricultural products. They need to move all across the country, and we need these services. Malls are coming into Nigeria, and they need services to move. Cold storage. We have ShopRite, Spar, so many development malls coming in. What do they need? They need logistics. They need services. They need companies that understand how to move goods quickly so that the goods can go from farm to shops onto the tables. And this has to be done very, very quickly. Data storage. I can go on and tell you all the opportunities that are there. But one of the things that I will just let you know is this. A lot of what was said there has very little to do with government. The areas where you can develop business within Africa today that has nothing to do with government is beyond what you actually know. There's so much that you can do coming in and working within Nigeria and within the Nigerian space. What we're saying right now is that please give us competition. We're tired of being monopolies. Thank you.